Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera terlebih dahulu. Kami ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada semua atas kesudian menyertai program webinar Seri Perpaduan Tiang Seri negaranya dianjurkan oleh Kementerian Perpaduan Negara dan Asian Law Students Association Malaysia, ALSA Malaysia. Untuk makluman, sebentar sahaja lagi akan berlangsungnya program webinar Seri Perpaduan Tiang Seri Negara episod yang ketiga dengan tajuk perbincangan Menerajui Perpaduan Melalui Rukun Negara. Moderator pada hari ini ialah Encik Roslin Dahlan dan sedikit pengenalan mengenai latar belakang beliau. Beliau merupakan peguam kanan Roslin Dahlan Saravana Partnership. Beliau telah melibatkan diri dalam bidang guaman selama lebih 30 tahun dan mempunyai pengalaman khususnya dalam bidang sivil dan komersial. Pencapaian tertinggi ialah beliau berjaya memenangi kes yang melibatkan agensi kerajaan dan pernah terlibat di dalam judicial review, kes seperti pemulihan tanah persendirian yang bertentangan dengan undang-undang oleh kerajaan dan lain-lain. Seterusnya, panelis-panelisnya dijemput untuk membincangkan topik pada hari ini, terdiri daripada yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Rebecca Fatima Si Maria, yang berbahagia Profesor Ulung Datuk Samsul Amri dan yang berbahagia Datuk P. Kamalanathan. Kami juga ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada YB Datuk Halimah Muhammad Sadiq, Menteri Perpaduan Negara kerana kesudian beliau melapangkan masa memberi sokongan sepenuhnya pada hari ini. Sebelum saya menyerahkan majlis ini kepada Encik Rosli Dahlan, marilah kita bersama-sama mendengar lagu patriotik Setia.
Demi negara yang tercinta, dicurahkan bakti penuh setia. Demi raja yang disanjung tinggi, kesetiaan tak berbelah bagi. Kepada pemimpin, kepada rakyat, hikmat diberi penuh taat. Sama bekerja, sama berusaha, setia berkhidmat untuk semua, rela berkorban apa saja. Amanah bangsa tetap dijaga. Kami berikrar penuh setia untuk agama, bangsa dan negara.
cue for me to start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera kepada semua. Salam hormat kita kepada Yang Berhormat Menteri Perpaduan Negara, Datuk Halimah Muhammad Sadiq. Terima kasih Yang Berhormat Menteri yang telah membantu kita untuk mengadakan webinar ini, iaitu Perpaduan Tiang Seri Negara yang ketiga. Kita semua rakyat Malaysia seharusnya berterima kasih atas usaha berterusan kerajaan untuk menyatu padukan dan memperkukuh perpaduan kita menerusi webinar ini. Terima kasih sekali lagi kepada pihak kementerian dan juga mahasiswa-mahasiswi ALSA Malaysia kerana sudi menjemput saya buat kali ketiga untuk mengemudi perbincangan kita pada hari ini. Hari ini kita mempunyai barisan tokoh-tokoh ya, yang sangat-sangat menarik. Kalau viewers dapat lihat yang terpapar di skrin, siapa itu yang saya maksudkan, izinkan saya membuat pengenalan secara ringkas. Yang pertama ialah Tan Sri Rebecca Santa Maria. Beliau adalah bekas Ketua Setiausaha MITI, and I had the privilege and honor of seeing her in action as MITI Sekjen. Beliau merupakan pengarah eksekutif wanita pertama di Sekretariat APEC yang berpusat di Singapura. She was the former Secretary General between 2010 to 2016 of MITI, where she oversaw the formulation of Malaysia's international trade policies and position. She often took the lead in their implementation as chief negotiator for bilateral and regional free trade agreements such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership and Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Yang kedua ialah tokoh yang tidak asing, sering kita nampak di TV, iaitu Profesor Ulung, Datuk Syamsul Amri. Kalau kita ikuti perjalanan dunia akademik, nama Profesor Syamsul ini tidak perlu diperkenalkan lagi. Wajah yang sering kita lihat di kaca TV, beliau merupakan pengarah atau pengasas Institut Kajian Etnik, iaitu KITA, nice acronym ya, KITA of UKM. Prof memulakan pengajian tingginya dalam bidang antropologi dan sosiologi di Universiti Melaya sebelum melanjutkan pelajarannya ke Australia. Beliau juga merupakan pengurusi Majlis Profesor Negara, iaitu majlis yang ditubuhkan bagi menggerakkan kepakaran tenaga akademik bagi membantu usaha kerajaan untuk membangunkan negara dan memberi kesejahteraan kepada masyarakat. Tokoh ketiga ialah kawan baik saya, Datuk P. Kamalanathan. Beliau merupakan penghubung bawang berkelulusan sijil or an accredited public relations practitioner from London Chambers of Commerce and Industry in England. He later obtained his degree from the Edith Cowan University in Australia. Our former Deputy Minister of Education, Datuk Kamalanathan, was recently appointed as the new chairman of the Labuan Port Authority. I hope it's not too late to congratulate Datuk Kamalanathan on that appointment. Kita bersua hari ini untuk membincangkan tentang lahirnya dan pentingnya rukun negara dalam memupuk perpaduan di negara kita. Since 1970, it is especially for those who are much younger than us, after singing the national anthem, you would have gone to read the Rukun Negara every Monday during the school assembly. Saya harap khususnya anak-anak muda kita yang lahir selepas 1970, semua telah pun menghafal kata-kata keramat ini dan bukan sahaja oleh ketua pengarah sekolah. Ramai yang membaca, mungkin juga ramai yang menghafal. Tapi berapa ramaikah yang memahami apa yang diucapkan? Secara ringkasnya, apabila kita sebutkan tentang peristiwa 31 Ogos, pasti semua akan juga sebut Hari Merdeka. Semua terbayang bunga api dan cuti. Tapi ramai yang tidak tahu bahawa tarikh 31 Ogos jugalah lahirnya rukun negara kita. Merdeka diisytiharkan pada 31 Ogos 1957, rukun negara pula diperkenalkan pada 31 Ogos 1970 oleh Yang di-Pertuan Agong yang keempat, iaitu Seri Paduka Baginda Almarhum Tuanku Ismail Nasiruddin Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Zainal Abidin. Jadi sama ada kita menganggap rukun negara itu sebagai falsafah, ideologi atau objektif pertama atau doktrin. Objektif pertama rukun negara adalah untuk mencapai perpaduan yang lebih erat dalam kalangan masyarakat yang berbilang bangsa dan agama. Unity in diversity. Jadi antara perkara-perkara, dan saya tak akan lanjutkan ini kerana ini adalah bidang kepada Profesor Ulung kita tentang objektif memupuk masyarakat Malaysia. Tetapi perlu juga kita menyusuri sejarah kepada rukun negara ini, iaitu selepas terjadinya tragedi 13 Mei 69. So as a country that was young, we had a bit of a problem. But our resolve to turn this into a country that will work and not a failed state ensured that we must have a common philosophy. As such, we then have our rukun negara. So, dalam masa kita nak menyambut 63 tahun kemerdekaan dalam beberapa hari ini, kita juga digalakkan, dan saya mahu menggalakkan kerana in one of my cases, I had actually cited the rukun negara in court. Tetapi hakim mengatakan itu dokumen lama. Nanti saya tak cakaplah nama hakim itu kan, nanti saya kena contempt of court pula. Tapi hakim kata itu adalah dokumen yang lama. Saya kata dokumen lama tapi bukan dokumen lapuk. Jadi hari ini saya menjemput pakar-pakar kita, tokoh-tokoh kita. Yang pertama sekali saya menjemput Profesor Ulung, Datuk Samsul Amri Bahrain, untuk memberikan sedikit ringkasan sejarah rukun negara, prinsipnya dan falsafahnya. Silakan Prof.
Okey. Boleh dengar ke? Ya. Terima kasih Saudara Rosli. Apa yang ingin saya sampaikan secara ringkas ialah menekankan rukun negara tumbuh dari satu krisis yang traumatik dalam negara kita. Dan krisis traumatik ini, iaitu pada 13 Mei 1969, ketika itu pemerintah terpaksa mencari jalan segera dan berkesan untuk membendung konflik ini. Maka berlaku beberapa peristiwa atau tindakan. Pertamanya, darurat diisytiharkan, parlimen digantung, Jabatan Perpaduan Negara ditubuhkan, Majlis Muhibah di setiap negeri daerah ditubuhkan, dan satu siri jamuan durian seluruh Kuala Lumpur diadakan. Kerana saya hadir. Ketika itu saya masih bersekolah, tapi saya hadir jamuan durian itu. Apa tanggungjawab saya? Menyanyi. Kerana saya di Tentera Maktab Diraja, Maktab Tentera Diraja, jadi kita ada band. Jadi kita telah diundang. Jadi 13 Mei ini adalah sebahagian daripada sejarah hidup saya. Bukan hanya untuk saya kaji ataupun ulas. Dan akhirnya kita 31 Ogos 70 kita isytihar rukun negara. Yang penting sekali ialah Kementerian Perpaduan Negara stand alone diisytiharkan pada 1 bulan 7 1972 dan tamat pada 24 7 1974 kerana pilihan raya berlaku pada 31 Ogos 1974. Jadi dibubarkan parlimen, dibubarkan kementerian. Bayangkan 46 tahun kemudian, tahun 2020, barulah wujud satu lagi Kementerian Perpaduan Negara stand alone. Lama betul kita menunggu perpaduan. Kerana ketika itu perpaduan ini diletakkan dalam banyak kementerian. Bila masuk dalam kementerian, dia jadi disampingkan. Isu perpaduan itu disampingkan. Jadi dalam konteks itu saya melihat bahawa pentingnya rukun negara ini adalah payung kepada usaha segera yang dilaksanakan oleh kerajaan ketika itu untuk membawakan kembali keamanan, kestabilan, keharmonian. Jadi kemudian ia masih diamalkan dalam pemahaman yang berbeza. Jadi pemahaman awal perpaduan berbeza daripada pemahaman perpaduan yang sekarang. Itu saya boleh huraikan dalam waktu lain atau kemudian. Tapi yang pentingnya perpaduan yang disebut semasa rukun negara itu adalah dikontekskan dalam kefahaman awal mengenai perpaduan. Jadi itu dia sejarah rukun negara itu. Jadi kepada saya, ia sangat penting dan bermakna oleh kerana ianya merubah keadaan suasana konflik kepada sesuatu yang aman, stabil dan harmoni. Namun saya selalu berikan label ini, kita masih lagi mengalami a situation of stable tension.
Thank you, Prof. A very nice coinage, stable tension.
Yeah.
It's either a paradox or...
Well, I have written quite a lot. I can send you some of this material. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, I think untuk anak-anak muda kita, mahasiswa-mahasiswi kita yang mendengar, I think dari segi pembangunan negara or the life of a nation, the history of a nation, walaupun kita menghadapi situasi ketegangan kaum 13 Mei 1969, 13 Mei 1969, tetapi resolve kita sebagai satu bangsa Malaysia untuk membangunkan negara ini dengan rukun negara ini, kita mendengar daripada Prof sejarahnya. Sekarang kita pergi pula kepada Tan Sri Rebecca, because Tan Sri Rebecca authored a very interesting book entitled The Smell of Home. Yeah, people who love words, literary things, and so on. Those words are very significant. And in the context of Tan Sri Rebecca, she shared her story of being a minority community. Now, most of us, I hope we recognize, as much as we want to be together, but we have a very rich heritage. In the case of Tan Sri Rebecca, her name itself, Santa Maria, shows her Portuguese heritage. Tan Sri, can you tell us from that perspective what Rukun Negara means to you and your community?
I'm waiting for them. Am I muted already?
Yeah, you have to unmute.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let me begin by mengucapkan selamat tengah hari kepada semua. Saya juga ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada YB Datuk Halimah Muhammad Sadiq, Menteri Perpaduan Negara, Datuk Wan Suraya, kawan saya dari KSU Kementerian Perpaduan Negara, dan juga penganjur webinar ini. Bagi saya, dari segi prinsip, kita tak boleh nafikan bahawa rukun negara masih membawa makna. And siapa yang tak mahu hidup aman damai? Siapa antara kita yang tidak mahu dihormati dan ingin melihat kedaulatan undang-undang diamalkan di negara kita? So for me, these are no-brainer principles. At the individual level, we can easily appreciate these principles. And goodness knows, there is a second nature to us. So why the need for Rukun Negara then? For me, it is a reminder about the collective. Rukun Negara was put in place at a critical phase of Malaysia's socio-economic journey. It was meant to permeate our national psyche and enable us to function as a cohesive collective. On that score, we must commend our leaders for outlining the 5 principles. Very simple, yet very impactful. That will be our North Star, as they say. So 40 years later, have we achieved what we sought out to do, you know? I think that's the question. For me, these principles are as relevant today as when they were first articulated. This is about the greater good, about core values and principles. We need to hold dear to these principles, reminding us of our humanity. This is all the more important during these challenging times and divisive politics. We need to move away from a binary way of thinking, black, white, bad, good. You know, we need to embrace our differences. There must be acceptance of our differences, not merely tolerance. And this, more importantly, these principles need to be translated into action. Let me take a moment to remind ourselves. I know there was this other famous document which set out also the vision for Malaysia, and it reiterates to a large extent what views are encapsulated in the Rukun Negara. Let me quote: Malaysia should be a nation that is fully developed along all dimensions, economically, politically, socially, spiritually, psychologically, and culturally. Okay? We must be fully developed in terms of national unity and social cohesion, in terms of economy, social justice, political stability, system of government, quality of life, social and spiritual values, national pride and confidence, unquote. So how do we move forward? I just want to take time to make 4 proposals. First one is leadership. It must all start at the top. You know, a prof mentioned that it took us 40 over years to bring back this whole idea, this conversation, this national conversation on unity. Our leaders need to walk the talk. Respect and loyalty to king and country. Respect the constitution. Respect rule of law. And when we treat each other with respect, it reflects kesopanan dan kesusilaan. In these challenging times, we need principled leadership that reflect the spirit of Rukun Negara. A servant leadership that puts the country, people, above personal interests. It's no use to spout empty rhetoric. We need to deduce principles from the action of the people we elected to represent us at the highest level, namely Parliament. Malaysians need to see our parliamentarians behaving with dignity and treating their colleagues with respect, regardless of their age, gender, or race. And equally important, behaving appropriately in the august house, clearly articulating the needs of the people they represent. The second point is about education. I'm very passionate about education. You know, children have no biases. They learn these from us adults. As such, as much as parents, schools also play a very key role in shaping values. So we must ensure that our curriculum includes an appreciation of the multicultural, multiracial Malaysia. And this should be introduced not in a didactic fashion, but also through practical examples and creative media. We also need to include in the curriculum constitutionalism. People need to learn from the very beginning what is the federal constitution. So then we understand separation of powers. This must be taught right from the beginning, you know, and not left to happen intuitively. And we have, you know, the thing about creative ways of presenting. We have lots of creative talent in this country. If we only care to ask. My third point is about race management. Let me take a step back. I know the moderator, Rosalie, mentioned about my background. Yes, you know, the minorities in Malaysia, we're not unique. There are many of us, and increasingly more and more of us who are multiracial, you know, mixed origin. My father's mother, for example, is a Malacca Straits-born Chinese. She Nyonya Malacca. Yeah? And her husband was the local Portuguese and Dutch. So, and my parents' siblings married Malaysians of Malay, Indian, and Chinese origin. Now, for my family, my siblings, even more complicated. I married a Malayali, a Malaysian of Indian origin. My sister married Baba Melaka. Another brother married Hokkien Chinese. Another sister married Chinese, Hokkien, and Sri Lankan mixed husband. You know, and my younger sister is married to a Kadazan. So, are we Malaysian or what? You know? So, and for us, for us, it's really about making sure we're Malaysians first. And that's what we invite, you know, we tell our children. So we must move away from this racial-based mindset. Let me just make one final point. It's about the system. Our policies across all government must be coherent and aligned. You know, we must take the whole of government approach. You know, when Prof mentioned that, you know, we used to put the agenda of unity in different ministries, and then it got sidelined. You know, it became the periphery and not the core. So the same thing, I mean, now even as a ministry, it's important that the ministry doesn't function as a silo on its own. You know, you need to have the whole of government approach. You need to have alignment across the ministries. As a civil servant, I understand this, you know, and so it's important to remind ourselves we must look at this across the whole country. Take a whole of government approach. Our communications must be transparent, must reflect that we are all equal under the law. I think that's a very important thing. When we get mixed messages, netizens go crazy. You know, we've had incidences like this where you treat different folks differently. You send the wrong message. So then people get cynical about national unity. So those are some of the thoughts that I had, and I really hope we are able to get somewhere with this big plan that we're having, and it becomes meaningful, it becomes actionable. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Rukun Negara is really, really about our shared destiny, a nation at peace with itself. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Tan Sri. But I think you missed one point because you said there will be 4 points: leadership, education, risk management,
And systems. Systems.
Sorry?
Systems.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you also, Tan Sri.
Can't hear you. We lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I was just saying I need to thank Datuk Wan Suraya. I was on the same board with her, and it is great, as Professor Shamsul had pointed out, that after 46 years, we now have Kementerian Perpaduan again. Yeah, and we hope this itself signifies what Tan Sri Rebecca mentioned just now about managing race management, and the system is now in place as far as ministry is concerned, that we now have a ministry to manage our race relations, perpaduan kita. That brings me to asking a former Deputy Education Minister, Datuk P. Kamalan Nathan, whether in his time, what was the policy then as far as syllabus is concerned about instilling semangat patriotik di kalangan orang muda dan pelajar di Malaysia, and whether the current education policy, as Tan Sri Santa Maria also mentioned, as Rebecca mentioned, that in race management, we have to start from the leadership. And we have, she mentioned in a very nice way, that our parliamentarians must have and show things or leadership by example. So we can get an answer from Datuk Kamalan Nathan on 2 aspects. One, as far as the country's education philosophy. Number 2, in his position as a parliamentarian before, can you behave, or can you tell your colleagues how to behave so that our youngsters will follow those good behaviors?
Thank you very much, my learned friend, Encik Rosli Dahlan. Sebelum tu saya ucap terima kasihlah kepada Kementerian Perpaduan, khususnya Yang Berhormat Datuk Halimah, dan juga ALSA Malaysia kerana sudi menjemput saya, memberi ruang untuk memberi pandangan saya dalam topik hari ini, dan juga memberi ruang bersama ikon Malaysia bersama dalam hari ini bersama saya, Prof Ulong, Datuk Dr. Shamsul dan juga Tan Sri Rebecca, yang merupakan idola kepada ramai rakyat Malaysia di sana, dan terima kasih juga kepada Encik Rosli Dahlan kerana sudi menjadi moderator. Sebelum saya menjawab soalan yang telah dikemukakan kepada saya oleh Encik Rosli Dahlan, Rukun negara ini walaupun seharusnya menjadi satu norma biasa rakyat Malaysia. Bukan saja masa COVID norma baru dan apa-apa dan sebagainya, tapi rukun negara seharusnya menjadi norma biasa kepada setiap rakyat Malaysia. Pada tahun 2006, bila saya mula-mula menulis blog 2006, pada masa itu juga saya telah menulis tentang harapan saya bagaimana negara kita ini ditubuhkan menggunakan 2 perkara yang sangat penting. Satu, negaraku, lagu negaraku, dan yang kedua, rukun negara. Kedua-dua ini tiada mana-mana satu kaum atau agama tersenarai dalam lirik atau ayat itu. Itulah Malaysia yang kita dilahirkan ini. Dan ada aspek Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia pula. Walaupun rukun negara ini diperkenalkan pada tahun 1970, tetapi penekanan terhadap rukun negara dan pendidikan hanya bermula pada pertengahan tahun 90-an. Dan saya dapati malah Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia telah mengambil pelbagai inisiatif dengan mewujudkan Kelab Rukun Negara. Saya masih ingat apabila saya pergi ke Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia masa saya menjadi Timbalan Menteri, yang baiknya ialah yang baiknya sekarang ialah Menteri Pendidikan pada masa itu ialah Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri sekarang, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, Dan beliau sentiasa memberi nasihat bahawa kita harus mengamalkan prinsip-prinsip rukun negara dalam kepimpinan kita, dan ini kerana inilah Malaysia yang kita miliki. Dan oleh demikian, apabila untuk menjawab soalan Tan Sri Rebecca dan juga sahabat saya Encik Rosli, sama ada dalam aspek pendidikan semua ini tersenarai dalam silibus kita, ada. Malah daripada prasekolah sehingga tingkatan 6 dalam pelbagai mata pelajaran. Semuanya ada, termaktub dalam semua mata pelajaran. Ada mata pelajaran tata rakyat dulu, mata pelajaran civic, pendidikan moral, dari tingkatan 5, tingkatan dalam aspek sejarah, perlembagaan negara, semuanya ada. Dan apabila ada semua ini tersenarai, mengapa pula kita masih ada masalah untuk menyelami dan memahami segala keperluan rukun negara ini? Saya teringat kata pepatah, ya, genggam bara api biar sampai jadi arang. Masalahnya, kita di sini nak genggam bara api, sakit sikit kita lepas. Tak nak sampai jadi arang. Maka there is no continuity to ensure the main objective is fulfilled. Mengapa saya kata begitu? Kerana daripada Kementerian Pendidikan maupun Kementerian Pendidikan dan juga Kementerian Pendidikan Tinggi, kedua-dua kementerian secara dasarnya telah pun mengarahkan untuk memastikan semua sekolah-sekolah di Malaysia ada kelab rukun negara ataupun sekretariat rukun negara. Untuk sekolah menengah, sekolah rendah, kelab rukun negara. Untuk IPTA, IPTS, sekretariat rukun negara. Tapi soalannya, sejauh manakah sekolah menengah ataupun IPTA, IPTS mengamalkan segala keperluan dan perincian rukun negara ini? Semuanya looks nice from the outside. Kalau ada sesiapa tanya, sekolah saya ada kelab rukun negara, universiti saya ada sekretariat rukun negara, tetapi apa mereka buat? Tak ada apa-apa. Adanya kelab ini ialah untuk memenuhi syarat-syarat kementerian. Sama ada aktiviti atau tidak, itu kami tidak pasti. Seharusnya tak boleh macam tu. Dan di sini berbalik kepada apa yang dikatakan oleh Prof. Ulong tadi, yang mana Kementerian Perpaduan ini merupakan satu kementerian yang sangat penting, tak boleh dijadikan dalam satu lagi kementerian, tanggungjawabnya lain. Sekarang saya rasa dengan adanya Yang Berhormat Menteri Perpaduan, Datuk Halimah ini, beliau juga mempunyai latar belakang perpaduan yang cukup baik, pelbagai kaum latar belakang dia. Dan saya pasti dengan adanya beliau dan pimpinan kerajaan yang memahami betapa pentingnya rukun negara, saya pasti kita akan dapat mencapai segala ini. And as for the second question, I've not forgotten my learned friend about my fellow parliamentarians. Kadang-kadang saya pun duduk di parlimen, tertekan juga. When I was a first backbencher, bila orang memaki hamun, kita pun spontaneously will stand up. But I realized that was not my DNA. So eventually I had to be much more composed. Masalahnya, this is across the board. We try our best to focus on subject matter. So when I became a deputy minister, I focused on subject matter. Walaupun ada pelbagai gangguan daripada ahli-ahli parlimen, khusus dari pembangkang masa itu, tapi we have to be focused on subject matter, and we must understand people are watching us. And when we know people are watching us, we will be careful in what we say and what we react. And that, I think, would ensure, of course, many parliamentarians are well-behaved. Out of 222 parliamentarians, I would say probably 80% of parliamentarians are very well-behaved. The other 15-20% are good people. They may talk very strong point in the parliament, but when you see them, you talk to them, they are decent people, they are nice people. But again, cara penyampaian masing-masing itu berbeza. Itu setakat inilah. Kalau ada soalan-soalan lain akan saya berkongsi dengan Encik Rosli dan panel. Terima kasih.
Firstly, Dato', those things about parliamentarian is actually from Tan Sri Rebecca. It wasn't from me.
Yeah, you pengaju soalan saja, I faham.
And you have actually a compliment from a person who wrote in to say, hebat bahasa Malaysia, Datuk Kamalan Nathan. Lengkap dengan peribahasa semua. So this is
Kita ni
Rebecca and Datuk Profesor Ulung, Datuk Syamsul, kena sulang lah dengan peribahasa lepas ni. Prof, now we move on to something a bit more interesting. Only a few days ago, I was with some Sarawakian. And of course, the mood now is about Merdeka.
Yeah.
And they said to me, actually to the Bornean states, yeah, they don't really think such a great deal about our Merdeka. Because pada dia ialah Hari Malaysia, di mana Sabah, Sarawak dan Singapura memasuki Malaysia atau menubuh Malaysia ditubuhkan. 57 pada dia adalah hanya Melaya. Independence from Malaya. What do you say to that, Prof?
Sekian, terima kasih.
And then of course I will ask Tan Sri Rebecca after that.
Yep. Well, sebenarnya
I was inviting you into an exclusive topic because what I wanted to do was how do we integrate Semenanjung as in orang Malaya with our Bornean states? Because at times in our fervor to celebrate our Merdeka 57, they seem to think it is not that significant for them. I won't say not relevant, but not that significant. And these are said by people who are, we have to listen to them. So that was where I was coming from to ask Tan Sri Rebecca from the aspect that being a former KSU, are these issues that have been, I'm sure it must have been talked about, and what are the things that are being done to bring about closer togetherness between our Bornean states and us. On the other hand, I have to say this because you're in MITI or you were in MITI, people say this, Sabahan, Sarawakian datang sini kerja tak pakai work permit. Kita pergi sana kena pakai work permit. Fair ke tak fair?
Yes.
This is an answer or the question that we must pose back to the Sabahan and Sarawakian. How do we bring about integration? Tan Sri Rebecca, maybe you can help us on that.
No, I won't get into the politics of it because but the points of agreement I think we need to look at again. These were compromises made, and Prof is the historian, I'm not a historian. These were compromises were made when Sabah and Sarawak joined Malaya. Yeah, Prof? And so I think what we need to do is to go back and re-engage. I think I know there have been initiatives, but I think a lot more should be done to re-engage well, we know we went from calling us West Malaysia, East Malaysia, if you remember those days. And then but now we have been very clear. I think that was a very good move to say Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, to keep reminding us that we are three, but we're still one entity, Malaysia. But the point is, when it comes to the economic side, because of the points of agreement that we established as a result of a compromise, then there are a number of structural changes that must be made. But we need to have the political will to make those changes. I mean, when we were negotiating those days, our lawyers cannot practice in Sabah and Sarawak. Our doctors, also same problems. So those are, I think, areas that provide avenues, opportunities for us to re-engage with our friends from Sabah and Sarawak. Prof?
Yeah, well, look, it's not only the lawyers from Malaysia, doctors too, they got problem there. And Sharia lawyer in Semenanjung cannot practice anywhere. You have to get a license from each and every state. I mean, Rosli, So from my point of view, we have to accept the fact that our existence is a negotiated
Anything that allows me to get more job from Sabah, Sarawak, I support it.
So I guess today's topic actually is something to help Rosli.
Yeah, I suspect so when it's organized by ALSA.
Actually, Prof, I wanted to ask Dr. Kamalanathan, because we heard from Tan Sri Rebecca's point, one, of course, on unique community, because the Portuguese community is very unique. Probably in that sense, people will say, why are our former colonial masters given almost a Bumiputra status to buy amanah saham Bumiputra? So these are kind of issues that it's there, and yet at times you are not robust enough as a society to talk about it. But that brings me to the Indian community, because I have been doing a lot of work for a lot of Indian temples facing, at times I'm on the other side where they are considered as squatters. At most times, I'm on their side saying that they were there first before the land was alienated and so on. How did the Indian community, as a significant community, not that the Portuguese community is not significant, but as one of the main component races of Malaysia, in the context of what we are achieving for, as far as we're concerned, Rukun Negara under Kementerian Perpaduan Negara that is being re-established after 46 years. Prof, Datuk Kamal, maybe you can give us that perspective from a minority community.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, as far as the Indian community is concerned, we have been part and parcel of this country's development. Our arrival to this country is not only during the time where we want to build the rail tracks and rubber tapping, but if you go back into the history, we came here to do, business during the early time. When you go to Bujang Valley, you see how the Indians were here, Empire, Sri Vijaya and everything else historically. So having said that, but however, that was historical perspective, which we cannot take away from the Indian community today. But having said that, I think somehow or other, we were able to sustain our growth here. A lot of Indian professionals in this country, lawyers, doctors, you look, there's so many Indians. Some have get the support of the government, some have worked independently, worked very hard, they are where they are. The country gives us an opportunity. Okay, kita diberi peluang. You are right. When you go to the temple say we have been here for 100 years, even long before the land was gazetted, but there was no proper procedural effort. Documentations were not done properly. If all the documentations were done properly, I don't think we'll have a problem. Today, we even have problem Malaysian Indians who don't have a birth certificate or identity card. They've got red IC and green IC. It's sad, they were born here. But the process in obtaining this, although it's doable, but it's taking them a lot of time and a lot of problem. I think the government needs to make it much more easier so that people like this with enough information, enough facts can be given their right to live in this country. And having said that, I think the Indian community in this country have accepted the fact that we will continue, we have stayed in this country, we are born in this country, we will die in this country, tanah tumpahnya darahku. Dan kerajaan akan sentiasa memberi keutamaan yang sewajarnya kepada rakyat Malaysia berketurunan kaum India untuk memastikan mereka terus dapat membangun dan berkongsi kesejahteraan. Tetapi soalannya sama ada cukup atau tidak. Ramai rasa tak cukup, ramai rasa ada peluang lagi, ada yang rasa terlalu banyak. Ini akan merupakan satu soalan yang akan wujud setiap masa. Tapi yang paling pentingnya ialah bagaimana kita dapat merealisasikan perpaduan negara. Dan bagi saya sebagai seorang rakyat Malaysia berketurunan India, bagi saya nilai-nilai yang saya belajar di sekolah adalah nilai-nilai rukun negara. Bukan saja rukun negara. Rukun negara sebagai 5 prinsip penting ini merupakan di antara komponen ni sahaja. Apa yang kita harus tahu ialah daripada awal bahawasanya saya rakyat negara, kita Malaysia, there is a lot of things sana. Kalau kita dapat memahami, menyelami, mengambil maksud segala rangkap di sana sehingga kita berikrar dengan 5 prinsip ini, saya rasa we will understand the real need of this country, and I don't think there should be there shouldn't be any compartment to say, that's my personal opinion, and I feel that this country, after having said that, I think the country has been fair. The government of the day, I have been with the Barisan National Government for many years, continuing to be with them, and I feel that we have done pretty well. There are limitations, there are things that we can make things better, which is what we will continue to do.
I have 2 points to add.
I would like to move away from the race issues now, because let's go a bit deeper into
Rukun Negara
itself.
Okay.
Because at that time and the era and time, Indonesia had its Pancasila, Bhinneka Ika Tunggal. There is no Indonesians. I come across Indonesians, they never question the national philosophy. Why is it that in Malaysia, our Rukun Negara becomes an issue? I want to ask that in this context, Because some of the young people have this problem. Dia kata, Perkara pertama atau rukun pertama ialah kepercayaan kepada Tuhan. Sekarang ni budak-budak muda ada yang tak percaya pada agama. Dan kalau tak percaya pada agama, maknanya tak percaya pada Tuhan lah. Kalau tak percaya pada Tuhan, adakah rukun negara termasuk hak untuk tidak percaya kepada Tuhan? So, some of these young people, they are very creative and so on. Do you think in the context of rukun negara being that is the first rukun, does that make rukun negara still relevant?
Pada saya, Saudara Rosli, sebenarnya sudah wujud kesalahfahaman mengenai rukun negara daripada mula. Bahawa rukun negara itu ada dua bahagian. Satu mukadimah, satu prinsip. Yang kita tekankan selama 50 tahun ialah prinsip. Kita dah jadi tafiz kepada prinsip rukun negara.
Betul.
Tetapi kita tidak mendukung cita-cita negara yang memerlukan prinsip itu. Inilah yang tidak ada. Yang saya rasa orang tidak faham. Bahawa mencapai perpaduan yang lebih erat dalam kalangan seluruh masyarakat. Itu yang pertama. Kedua, memelihara cara hidup demokratik. Ketiga, mencipta satu masyarakat yang adil. Kemakmuran bersama. Menjamin satu cara liberal terhadap tradisi-tradisi kebudayaan dan akhirnya membina satu masyarakat progresif melalui sains dan teknologi. Ini tidak pernah kita bincangkan. Saya tidak pernah diundang ke forum berkenaan ini dalam hidup saya sebagai profesor dan juga pensyarah. Apa artinya? Artinya kita terlalu fokus kepada prinsip sehingga kita bertanya dan menjadi pentafsir prinsip, sedangkan prinsip itu ada asal dan asasnya, iaitu melalui cita-cita negara. Itu yang pertama sekali. Yang keduanya ialah konsep perpaduan pada zaman atau pada berlakunya 13 Mei itu merupakan satu kefahaman awal yang sudah berubah sekarang. Kalau dulu perpaduan itu berkait dengan hubungan erat, salam, ada jamuan, kemudian sekolah wawasan, kemudian ada unity is uniformity. Tetapi pada sekarang, perpaduan itu diidamkan, kesepaduan yang dicapai, penyatu paduan diusahakan. Ini dia tiga perkara yang berlaku dalam senafas bila kita berbincang tentang perpaduan. Perpaduan itu there are moments of unity. Bila Lindan lawan Chong Wei, Subah Kuala Lumpur senyap orang tengok badminton. Ya. Bila main bola begitu juga. Tapi tengoklah kalau you sokong Johor dengan Negeri Sembilan lain lah. Ya. Tapi kalau kita lihat COVID begitu juga, semua orang menghadapi masalah besar negara. Ya.
I don't know whether the rest can hear.
We can hear.
We
can hear you.
Ya, okay. So jadi pada saya perpaduan yang terkini, kefahaman baru ini harus diwar-warkan bahawa perpaduan kita yang kita idamkan, kesepaduan ataupun dalam bahasa Melayu kesepaduan ini proses ke arah perpaduan, itulah yang kita berjaya. Mengapa saya kata berjaya? Mengapa kita kata aman? Mengapa orang Jerman datang ke sini belajar the social engineering, tidak mengenai mechanical engineering? Sebab dia kata, I'm expert on engineering in Germany, but I want to know your social engineering success. Now, ini perkara penting kita beri penerimaan kita. One of the biggest modal Malaysia inilah the success story that we have. Itu sebabnya saya rasa kita kadang-kadang tidak mahu puji diri sendiri. Pada saya, kita berjaya. We agree on one thing. Ada dua sub-clause. Peguam tahulah kan, dia sub-clause dia kan. You agree to agree and you agree to disagree. But the fact that on both sides we agree. Bila timbul yang kita agree, you tengok kalender dekat kedai gunting, kedai apa tu, kedai dobi. Masjid, tanda masjid sebelah kuda. Hari Sabtu dan hari Jumaat. Hari raya situ. Sebelahnya kuil Hindu punya perayaan. Kita telah mencipta satu simbol perpaduan kita dan bersetuju. Kita bersama dalam satu kalender. Belum lagi dalam hidup kita. Kita memang hidup dalam keadaan itu. Tetapi kita ada juga yang tak bersetuju. Bila penggunaan perkataan Allah, timbul masalah. Tapi makanan, Tan Sri tahulah, makanan is orang Malaysia ditanya what do you like about Malaysia, we never been asked what you like about Malaysia, you know. So but everyone knew that they like about Malaysia is food. Yes, this is masa kita buat plan perpaduan dulu, itulah soalan yang saya tanyakan. Apakah yang anda suka mengenai Malaysia? Apakah yang anda tak suka? Berikan cadangan kalau tak suka. Mereka jawab perpaduan di Malaysia ni yang paling suka sekali ialah makanan. Dan saya dapati ini tidak dipertimbangkan sebagai satu faktor negatif dalam perancangan kita. Jadi ini saya lihat bahawa kita kena ubah pemahaman perpaduan ini kepada sesuatu yang baru. Kalau ada yang tak dapat kita huraikan, itu yang saya katakan, there are social deficits in this country. Jurang sosial yang harus diselesaikan. Agama, kebudayaan, perpaduan, pendidikan yang Tan Sri cakap tadi tak habis, ya. Dan begitu juga yang dibincang oleh bekas menteri kita, timbalan menteri kita. Jadi saya dapati ada 10 perkara yang saya dapat daripada town hall meeting seluruh negara, orang-orang yang memberi pandangan apa yang kurang di negara ini. 10 perkara inilah patut kita uruskan, termasuk politik federalism. Itu isu besar. Jadi kalau kita kena buat usaha perpaduan di Malaysia, ialah fokus kepada setidak-tidaknya 10 perkara yang orang ramai anggap sebagai bermasalah. Tiap-tiapnya memerlukan tapak integrasi, a platform for us to meet, to convene, and then barulah kita dapat selesaikan satu persatu, iaitu usaha penyatu paduan, which is reconciliation. So the 3 concept, perpaduan, kesepaduan, penyatu paduan, has to be understood in one breath. This is what we are, and this is what the new kefahaman yang saya rasa kementerian nak war-warkan dalam dasar perpaduan negaranya.
Thank you. I had received signals from the organizer that we are running on our time, but I'm very interested in what Prof said regarding understanding what Rukun Negara particularly mean on the issue of membentuk satu sikap yang liberal terhadap tradisi kebudayaan yang kaya dan berbagai corak. I don't know whether the panelists are aware that I represented the case of Kasim Ahmad on difference of belief and so on.
Yep.
And I was the one who argued the case on Borders Bookstore regarding Ishak Manji's book. Now, if our people understand that representing an interest of that nature,
Yep.
it is part of ours being a country yang negara hukum, a country of rule of law. And yet, the brickbats I received at that time was, ini peguam anti-agama Islam, ini peguam LGBT. Now, Tan Sri, Rebecca, how as a society are we to move forward? We were just not talking about race relation, now even on matters of faith. Yeah, that's why I brought the issue. Some of these young people said that Rukun Negara is irrelevant because the first point is kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, and kalau kita tak percaya, kita kena condemn. On the other hand, you have raised a very interesting point, and that is membentuk satu sikap yang liberal. And these are the things that the society rarely consider. Tan Sri Rebecca, maybe you give us that perspective because you have dealt with many international countries, and of course I will ask Datuk Kamalan Nathan also on this point from the perspective of former Deputy Education Minister.
You know, for me, at the end of the day, it's all about messaging. How do we coordinate the messaging that and how do we communicate what we want, the acceptance of the differences in the country. And for me, that's so important. Acceptance. Don't talk about tolerance. I get very upset when people say, oh, it's about, you must tolerate each other. No, it's about accepting our differences. Well, you can choose to believe or not believe in God. I mean, that's your prerogative. That's your personal thing. But from a national perspective, the national psyche is what is so important. And that's where the way we communicate with each other, the kind of messaging that's coming out from our leaders, from the different communities, that's all important. At the end of the day, that's what matters. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your gender, your faith. Forget those. Don't look at our differences. Look at what unites us. And that's where we should be going with this.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Datuk Kamala, maybe you can give your last point here because I'm told that we haven't taken even the questions from some of the people. Maybe we extend a bit more if you don't mind, so that we can take some of the questions. Datuk Kamala Nathan, on this point about liberal society. What is it contrary to the concept of Rukun Negara being the first rukun kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, whereas yang seperti Profesor mengatakan tadi ialah menghormati kebebasan dengan cara berpandangan atau pandangan yang liberal, iaitu more acceptance. Then not just as Professor Tan Sri Rebecca kata, just mere tolerance. It's about embracing our differences.
He's not online, you know. He's not online
Alright.
already, I think. Yeah.
Maybe then, Tan Sri, you can help to address that point as well.
I like I said, I mean, for me, it's all about accepting all our differences. Like in my family, for example, you know, we are so mixed, but nobody focuses on the differences. People we focus on what is our strength, what makes us
Our
Malaysia.
commonality.
You know,
Yeah,
what makes us
commonality.
Malaysia. That's the important thing. You know, and one of the areas that we have to deal with, whether we like it or not, is the divisive politics. And he's back on the divisive politics that we have today. Sometimes, you know, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, okay, you politicians, can you all just forget your differences? Please focus on the people and what matters to the people. Be more inclusive, because when we talk of the differences in Malaysia, you cannot ignore the minority groups, the orang asli, the orang asal, whatever you call them. You know, focus on what would bring us together as a cohesive collective, as opposed to focusing on the differences, what makes us different. No. That's what come out. They had some questions for you, you know.
We lost.
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. There was some lightning around my place. My apologies. Yes, seriously, what was the question?
The issue that Prof was mentioning, that
Yeah.
we end up jadi tahfiz kepada rukun negara, only menghafal, tidak menghayati. And when we're talking about kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, we forget that the philosophy behind it is about membentuk sikap liberal terhadap
Yeah,
yang berbeza. And
true.
you know,
Itu
I
yang-
wanted to move away from the race issue here.
No, that was what I was trying to say just now. We are only talking so centered. Kita berpaksikan kepada 5 prinsip sahaja. Tak boleh macam tu. Kerana rukun negara ni secara khususnya bukan berpaksikan kepada 5 prinsip rukun negara saja. Ada mukadimah dia. Ada sebab-sebab mengapa mereka yang mewujudkan rukun negara ini ada banyak memelihara cara demokratik, menjamin satu cara liberal terhadap tradisi kebudayaannya. Tak pernah orang sebut. Semua ni ada dalam rukun negara. Maka apabila kita buat berbagai aktiviti di Kementerian Pendidikan, kita buat effort to bring all students together. Semua ni okey, berjalan lancar. Tetapi ada tak kita menyelami, ada tak kita memahami segala keperluan dalam rukun negara ini? Pernah saya bangkitkan isu. Contoh, mereka nak buat PLKN, Program Latihan Khidmat Negara. Kepada siapa? Pelajar-pelajar tingkatan 5 selepas peperiksaan SPM. And the student lepas tingkatan 5 sudah membina satu pendapat tentang kaum-kaum lain berdasarkan kepada pengalaman dia. Bagi saya, kalau benar-benar kita nak memupuk semangat perpaduan, kita harus mula apabila pelajar masuk tingkatan 1. Program Latihan Khidmat Negara. Yeah, I mean, because we have vernacular system, all the students will eventually come to a secondary school. And Form 1 is where all of them meet. So when they go to Form 1, dalam tingkatan 1 ni, aspek pendidikan tu penting. Tapi it is not an exam year. So this tingkatan 1, 2 bulan yang pertama ini, kita hanya fokus untuk menanamkan perpaduan negara, prinsip-prinsip, dasar-dasar rukun negara ini kita beri perkenalkan kepada semua pelajar-pelajar. Ini bagi saya lambat laun akan nampak sejauh mana berkesanannya program ini.
Panelists, I have been informed by the
we have to
host
lead
that
too.
we have overrun our time, but I want to give each one of you 1 minute to wrap up in this context. Yeah, Dr. Tan Sri Rebecca has raised almost an action plan for us, and that is number 1, leadership, education, race management, and system. Dr. Kamalanathan has raised how we can actually capitalize on what we have already. Professor, on the other hand, have mentioned that there is an importance to put this ministry, Kementerian Perpaduan Negara, with its Secretary General, Dato' Wan Suraya, to be as important as our other ministries which are in charge of either the country's external security that Kementerian Pertahanan, or internal security which is Kementerian Dalam Negara. In other words, race relationship and the management of that is that high. Now, what can you say to that so that
10 minit.
we can go back to the minister and say, we go to the government, these are tokoh-tokoh kita, tokoh-tokoh daripada akademia, tokoh-tokoh yang pernah, yang mengatakan pentingnya kementerian ini. Prof, you take the floor first for 1 minute.
Okey. Dia ada dua perkara. Satu perkara pemahaman mengenai perpaduan, satu lagi perkara mengenai birokrasi dalam negara kita. Jadi pada saya kefahaman mengenai perpaduan perlu dibina yang baharu untuk mensesuaikan dengan keadaan sekarang. Kita bukan lagi dalam keadaan 13 Mei, tetapi keadaan kita ialah dalam ekonomi yang baik. Yang kedua, pentadbiran. Pentadbiran kita sistemnya tidak berubah. Tadi Tan Sri cakap tentang sistem. Sistem pentadbiran kita apa yang baru? Naik pangkat. Itu bukan baru. Tetapi bagaimana kedudukan kementerian-kementerian tadi dalam peri pentingnya setiap kementerian itu. Dan itu saya baca daripada pangkat KSU dalam tiap-tiap ministeri. Tak sama. Maknanya tak samalah kedudukannya. Dan saya dapati dulu perpaduan yang last sekali dalam Jabatan Perdana Menteri. Bila mesyuarat dia duduk jauh balik tiang. Macam mana dia nak menyampaikan suara rakyat dan suara apa yang didapatkan daripada orang ramai. Jadi ini perubahan yang perlu berlaku. Dua, kefahaman yang pertama kefahaman, yang kedua birokrasi. Sekian.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
You know, I will say the best for last. Datuk Kamalan
No, actually, thank you very much. Saya berbalik kepada peribahasa saya kongsi tadi. Genggam bara api biar sampai terdiarang. Yang ni, kita ni dalam keadaan bara api. Dan tiada siapa yang berani pegang dia sampai jadi arang. Nampak akhirnya kita ada seorang yang diberi nama Datuk Halimah yang akhirnya diberi peluang untuk memegang bara api ini. Dan kita sebagai rakyat Malaysia harus memberi sokongan kepada beliau untuk memastikan kelancaran Kementerian Perpaduan ini dapat membantu kerajaan khususnya pimpinan Yang Amat Berhormat Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin untuk memastikan dalam keadaan hari ini kerajaan ini dapat balik kepada landasan asal kita, bukan saja berdasarkan kepada prinsip-prinsip rukun negara, tetapi sejarah holistik rukun negara kita. Terima kasih.
Yeah.
Sri Rebecca.
Thank you. Here I want to just say
is headed by two strong ladies.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is important that we profile. Yeah. I think it's important for us to profile the ministry so that it provides that connecting, that bridge that we need to build the national unity, you know, and the ministry has to really project itself, its importance, the significance of national unity.
Yep.
That messaging must come across, and the ministry must go out and engage the different aspects of the Malaysian society, whether it's Sabah, Sarawak, Peninsula Malaysia, whether it's the different leaders, whether it's the different parts of government. And that's the role of the ministry. It's now up to the ministry to project itself and say, we are very, very important and relevant.
Yeah, true.
That's my last words for the ministry. Yeah.
Well
and I know
said,
Suraya, I'm sure she's going to do it.
Yes, of course.
They got a good tag team there, you know, Wan Suraya and the minister. I think both of them have got similar wavelength. I think they will do very well, provided I think people support them to make sure that everything is done.
Yeah.
I think the four panelists and myself as the moderator, we give our vote of confidence to Wan Suraya as the Sekjen of Kementerian Perpaduan. We give our vote of confidence to Datuk Halimah Sadiq. We see how she conducts herself in Parliament. Truly, you know, and they say this is like the proverb, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So I think with these two ladies in the Kementerian, Malaysia can see exciting times dalam memupuk perpaduan negara. Dengan itu saya tamatkan sesi kita. Terima kasih kepada ahli panelis, terima kasih kepada Profesor Ulung, terima kasih kepada Datuk Kamalan Nathan and Tan Sri Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merdeka,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Merdeka.
Merdeka.
Selamat Hari Merdeka. Merdeka.
Yeah.
Baik, Terima kasih yang tak terhingga sekali diucapkan kepada semua pihak yang menjayakan Alsa Malaysia webinar Seri Perpaduan Tiang Seri Negara daripada episod pertama sehinggalah pada episod pada hari ini. Ini merupakan episod terakhir bagi Seri Perpaduan ini. Jutaan terima kasih juga diucapkan kepada moderator tetap kita iaitu Encik Rosli Dahlan kerana sudi menjayakan program ini dan memberi sokongan yang luar biasa kepada Alsa Malaysia. Tidak lupa juga ingin kami ucapkan jutaan terima kasih kepada para panelis kita iaitu Tan Sri Rabika Fatimah, Profesor Ulung Datuk Samsul Amri dan Datuk P. Kamalanathan. Sekian, terima kasih.